Welcome to North Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is useful human Arif Hassan. Arif, are you ready for Trubisky this weekend?
I am extremely ready.
It's time. The time is now. Children are our future. This is happening.
Bring on the takes.
We were discussing earlier on the show whether or not it would be good for your brand if Trubisky throws 6 touchdowns to the left and then name checks you in the post-game interview on the field. And I think we determined that it would be good for your brand only if he name checks you on the field. Like if he just throws the 6 touchdowns, it's no good for you.
Right. I mean, I suppose like after the 6th touchdown, if he makes a celebration that is very clearly a reference to me, which I have no idea what that would look like, but if it's like very clearly a reference to me, that's probably good.
Starts pretending to swim.
And then he'd be asked about it afterwards, you know.
Maybe he starts pretending to swim like a cod, like he's trying to bring attention to the cod crisis.
To the North Cod. Yeah. That I could see that. Maybe in the post-game presser, if he name checks me, I could see that being helpful. But yeah, other than that, honestly, he should just throw interceptions to the left. I'm a big fan of that.
Would that be? I think that would actually be better for your. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that would be better for your brand necessarily than him name checking you after throwing 6 touchdowns, but we'll see.
No, the name check is the best in terms of my brand, but failing that, throwing 6 touchdowns to the left would be awful for my brand, and so there's a high risk if he throws well to the left, but it's only profit if he throws poorly to the left.
So we've got a lot of things to talk about, including the victory over Oakland, which that felt like the opposite of the Green Bay game, and the Green Bay game felt like the opposite of the Falcons game. So apparently we're just going to be doing this during alternating weeks. So that'll be fun. Look forward to that. Yeah. So we've got a lot of things to talk about, but we have some cool announcements to talk about before we go into things even like the re-signing of Treadwell and Marcus Sherrill. So, again, thank you guys so much for listening and helping out the show, whether or not you're helping out just posting on social media or whether you are donating to the show. Kind of, if you hear value in what we are producing and what we put out, you can donate in one of 2 different ways. You can go to paypal.me/NorseCode, or you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. We are doing a little promotion right now. If you donate $3.50 or more via Patreon at the end of the month, we will be sending out some free swag. We've got plenty of stuff from the New York trip. We also have a few random things from years past that we have not gotten rid of, and I feel like this is the right time to do it. So we may or may not have something involving Christian Ponder. This is not meant to discourage you from donating, mind you. This is just something that you may receive. Sadly, it's not signed, but maybe one day you too can either have it signed or just be blocked by his wife on Twitter. So if you donate $3.50 or more to the show via Patreon, you can get some free swag. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate to the show there. That is much more of a subscription-based thing. It's like an NPR pledge drive, so you can just go there and do that, and you can get some free swag out of us. Also, breaking news. We have our live show announcement. So on November 29th, we will be taping a special live edition of Norse Code from a bar in the Seattle area. In Seattle, it is called Petoskey's. That is the name that they have, that's how they've wanted it to be pronounced. So Petoskey's is in Seattle, and they will be hosting us the evening of November 29th, which is the day after Thanksgiving. So that Friday, we will be doing a special live edition of Norse Code. We had a hell of a lot of fun doing the show in New York. Met a bunch of you, had a blast. Come out to the Seattle game. Check us out. We will be over at Petoskey's probably around 7 or 8 o'clock. We have not nailed down a time yet, but head out to Petoskey's on November 29th. I have told the owner that we will have at least one person there, so please do not make me a liar. Again, we're super excited about that and really happy to get that booked. They actually just about an hour or so ago, I finished up the booking with them, and they've already promoted the show. So check them out. This should be this should be a hell of a lot of fun. And the menu is very Minnesota centric. Very, very Midwestern food centric. So
Juicy Lucy's. They got tater tot hot dishes. Other less stereotypical but still very Minnesotan food.
Exactly. And the dude's originally from St. Cloud, so he was really happy to be hosting a Minnesota Vikings podcast. So check him out. We will be there November 29th, and I will be pimping this show until the day before we leave. So again, November 29th. Check us out. That should be awesome. So all of that aside, the first thing that we should probably talk about on Norse Code this episode is apparently nostalgia is back in full swing, because we re-signed both Laquan Treadwell and Marcus Sherrills to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, Green Day's released a new album. Blink-182 just released a new album. Foo Fighters just released a new album. It was time for throwbacks, and I think Marcus Sherrills, Laquan Treadwell, all pro level punt gunners each. Joining the team to supplement the special teams unit. Just really phenomenal stuff. So, big throwback time. Mitch Trubisky has been compared several times by people not in Minnesota to Christian Ponder, also a throwback. Just really, I think, a good time to be looking backwards, because, hey, you remember Sherrills. You like Sherrills. Why not more?
Is Asiata next in all of this? Like, I feel like
Athriata?
Yes. 3 touchdowns or nothing.
I hope not. Not for anything he's done. He did all right in the AAF, but rather because I really like these running backs. We're doing all right.
So Treadwell is coming onto the team directly as a result of the injury to Chad Beebe, who is now going to be going on IR. Correct?
Yes. BB. Well, I don't know if BB is going on IR. No, he is. He is. That was in the announcement, which sucks. But I think was he injured on the play he was also penalized on, which that happened to a Falcons player too. But that seems to be the case, right? Where he was injured on the play where he earned an illegal blocking penalty.
I didn't catch exactly where he got hurt, and I haven't seen any clips on Twitter as to exactly when he was when he ended up getting hurt. I didn't when I watched the replay, I didn't even see him go down necessarily. I just saw a lot of Thielen going, "What the hell is going on? And why are you trying to call this on me?"
Right, yeah, which was really funny. But yeah, it was called on BB. And the reason it's a penalty, and I clarified this with some other people, is so the NFL sent out an officiating video last week about this kind of penalty. So I actually watched that even before this game had started. The reason it's a penalty is because BB is moving back towards his own end line, which is part of the expanded definition of what blindside blocks are. And in order to do that and still have a legal block, he needs to primarily block with his hands. He lowered his shoulder, which is part of the reason he got injured, because he was blocking like Vontaze Burfict or something. Like, oh boy, good luck. But yeah, so that took away that penalty. But yeah, so we get Treadwell back. That seems so optimistic. Treadwell comes back.
It's a gift. It's every day is a gift with Laquan Treadwell.
And the one of the benefits to bringing Treadwell back is actually you get to add a receiver to the roster that has no cap impact. Or rather, the cap impact is net neutral. I shouldn't say no cap impact. So his veteran's minimum salary does count against the cap at the veteran minimum, which I think the CBA says that if you sign someone for the veteran minimum, no matter how much the cost is, the cap hit is around $600,000. And then the Vikings get credit for $600,000 against next year's cap. So they still have to have the cap room to sign him. They do. They sign him, and then next year the Vikings get like an extra $600,000. So great. And that's because they're already liable for the full cap of his guaranteed salary. So that's part of the reason they probably signed him. Plus, obviously, he knows the offense. He was working all offseason in the offense. I don't expect him to make a big impact. He was cut, But whoever takes his place amongst the receivers on the roster will probably see snaps instead, which in this case is BC Johnson. I had kind of hoped that they would promote someone up from the practice squad like Dylan Mitchell, maybe Davion Davis, but instead they bring someone on who has experience in the offense and is a really good special teamer.
So there is that. Speaking of a very good special teamer, Marcus Sherrills, who, unless I'm mistaken, never played a regular season game for the Saints, also is coming in presumably to handle kick returns, and he also did play corner for a little while as well.
Yeah, that's the rumor. But yeah,
I saw it at least once. Like it did happen seeing him in the backfield at least once, or he was just confused on which down he was supposed to be out there.
What am I doing here?
I'm a gunner.
But yeah, so Sherrills is obviously so Treadwell is there. So Treadwell was signed and Sherrills was signed, and so they put BB on IR, but they had to make another move, and they actually instead of moving a cornerback like Mark Fields, which I had expected, or Chris Boyd off the roster, they actually put Davion Davis onto IR. So the Vikings now have 7 cornerbacks. But Sherrills is there to replace the punt return capability of Chad Beebe, while Laquan Treadwell is there to replace the receiving capability. Well, that's optimistic, but in theory, to replace the receiving capability of Beebe. And that's really great news because Sherrills has something that BB doesn't, which is hands. He has a much better capability to hold on to the ball and prevent it from being muffed and stuff like that. He also, I think people have forgotten a little bit, he's also an extremely explosive punt returner. So if you take a look 2015 through 2019, obviously he didn't actually return any punts in 2019. But if you take a look at every player who's returned at least 50 punts, which I think is a pretty good cutoff. The order goes Tyreek Hill in terms of yards per punt return. Tyreek Hill, Darren Sproles, Tariq Cohen, and Marcus Sherrills. So he's fourth among that really astounding group of players in yards per punt return. He hasn't had a ton of punt return touchdowns recently. He had a couple of them in the middle of his career, but 3 in that span, none last year. But he always has that capability. And of course, he's fielded a ton of punts because the Vikings defense has been so good over that time. So he has the most punt return yards of anybody in that span. But yeah, very capable punt returner, primarily at this point in his career, probably more a safe option than an explosive option. But I think he still does have that capability despite being 31. So really great as an asset there. Better than BB, but BB's younger, more cost controlled in some ways. I mean, veterans minimum, you don't really have to worry about cap hit. And also BB fills a spot at an area of need in terms of depth. Whereas at cornerback, even though the Vikings do need depth there, they do have more options. So that's probably one of the reasons that the Vikings weren't as willing to be aggressive about going after Marcus Sherrills last offseason. But now they have him.
And I suppose the other reason why Sherrills is out there potentially returning kicks is because the Vikings are so thin at wide receiver at the moment that it would be better if somebody like Sherrills went out, worst case scenario if he got hurt, than have another wide receiver go out.
Yeah, you don't want to expose another wide receiver to that, because then now you're down to 3 and now you have to promote somebody who's clearly not ready to play. Whereas at cornerback, yeah, you've got an injury concern with Mike Hughes still. How likely is he to be re-injured? But I mean, you have 7 bodies there. Now, Nate Metters, Mark Fields, Chris Boyd, none of that's very confidence inspiring, but it's better than literally a vacuum or a void. So having Sherrills, be the punt returner where, I mean, you take some of the hardest hits, that's definitely substantially better.
So we do have a game to talk about as far as the Oakland game. The Vikings were victorious. They did defeat the Oakland Raiders. Boy, that was one hell of a start to the game. The Vikings ended up jumping out to quite the lead.